So we're just going to meditate for maybe like 10 minutes, but sometimes these short meditations are really valuable, just to kind of ground and center and bring up some joy in the heart, joy in the mind. So notice how your body feels right now, if it needs to move and settle into a little bit different posture or not. And bring some kind attention to how your back feels, your shoulders, your neck, your jaw, your eyes. How it feels to be resting on whatever surface you're on, whether it's a chair or a bed or a seat or a sofa or whatever, sitting or lying down. Just really paying a bit of attention and giving some appreciation to the body. Relaxing your hands, your legs, your feet. Ajahn Ganha said to us, meditation is easy. Just breathe in happily, breathe out happily. Breathe in, sabai, breathe out, sabai. Sabai is probably my favorite Thai word. Breathe in, relaxed, breathe out, relaxed. No goals, no objectives right now, just letting go. Notice where your attention goes when things get quiet. Mine has been conditioned for a long time to settle on my breath. And it's like the breath is a friend. Not only is it keeping me alive, it's also calming. It also brings a kind of energy with it. Breath energy. Life energy. But notice where your attention wants to rest. Maybe some place in the body. Or maybe with thoughts. And then you can investigate a little bit as to whether the thoughts that are arising are helpful or not. Are they happy or not? And the ones that are restful, happy, bringing peace and contentment, you can let those come and go as they will. And if there are thoughts that are bringing more stress, maybe criticism or painful memories or worries about the future, then for now, can just acknowledge them and not give them any energy, not feed them at all. Just let them go. If they need more attention, something important, we can come back to it a little bit later. After we've had a chance to really relax. And we can notice the state of our mind. If it needs some enthusiasm, joy, uplift, then bring to mind something that inspires you. Maybe thoughts of a person. For me, especially lately, it's been the Buddha. Those phrases in Pali, those words that are used to refer to the Buddha. Bhagava Arahang Sama Sambuddho. But for you, what is it? What is it that brings happiness, joy, spiritual uplift, inspiration to your heart? Sometimes it could be something you remember, a kind action, your own or someone else's, generosity, a noble attitude or approach, or a circumstance where you or someone else has risen above the difficulties. Some things like that can be inspiring to recall. Or perhaps some experience with the natural world, beauty of the trees, beauty of the sunlight on the water, sounds of the birds, stillness. And why is it so inspiring when we think about nature? Well, nature shows us the Dhamma, the impermanence, the not selfness, the joy and the challenges, sukha and dukkha, and how it's outside our control, which brings a kind of freedom. If it's not in our control, we can step back and accept it, let it go, let go of our attachment, our need, our desire to control. It's a relief. This too is practice. So I want to welcome everyone again. We are now almost exactly halfway through the Vasa, through the 3-month rains retreat period. Often it's called rains residence instead of retreat because a lot of times monasteries don't go into full retreat for this time of year, especially in the West, in the Northern Hemisphere. There tends to be a 3-month retreat in the winter time instead. But here at KBV, we're doing actual retreat time, and hopefully the whole community is finding ways of practice during that time that are supportive. And I think today, halfway through, I'd like to discuss, how it's going, and maybe we can give each other some ideas. One thing that becomes clear as we live longer is that the second half of everything goes faster. I'm not the first one to have said that or to notice it, but it certainly does seem to me to be true. So I fear a little that the second half of this wonderful time of retreat will go faster than the first half. And I want to make the most of it. I'm just going to tell you a little bit about how this first half of the Vasa has been for me, and it really starts to show me things about my practice. And first of all, I've had a lot of time during this last 6 weeks being sick, and some of you know that I did some fasting in there for a little while. It was an effort to try to support the body. And it's nothing, as far as we can tell, nothing really serious, but this intense acid reflux issue and indigestion problems, and had to go out for an ultrasound one day, and there are various doctor's appointments to sort this out. And of course, this is part of the practice too, being present with the body, with the circumstances that we have. And it's not uncommon at all to go into a retreat and then have health issues arise. And I've seen it even when I had a friend who worked very hard in her job, and every time there was a winter holiday time would start, she'd get sick. It was like the body saying, okay, I've been holding on and blocking everything out for all year. Now it's my turn. And I think sometimes the body gets like that when we take retreat time. Maybe it's cleansing or dealing with whatever, but the practice with our health is so rich and beneficial. Listening to the body, trying to do what we can to support it, and practicing with pain. Had a lot of stomach pain over the last few weeks, so practicing with pain and discomfort. And so that's been happening, but also there have been a lot of other threads to my practice. Sitting, meditation, usually my approach, sitting, almost always at one or more sessions, most sessions probably using mindfulness of in and out breathing as the framework. And it's so versatile that, it covers all four foundations of mindfulness, and the 7 enlightenment factors can be developed through using those 16 steps. Even as I say that, it's like I don't really use 16 steps or 16 instructions. It's much more spontaneous and intuitive. And I think this is what I would like to encourage for your practice. And I'll talk more about that in a minute, but also the mindfulness of in and out breathing practice supplemented frequently by practicing with the divine abidings, the four Brahma Viharas, loving kindness, compassion, joy about all good things, and equanimity. And then there's often some body contemplation happening. And then there are other things that come in as valuable and, again, brought together intuitively. Mantra. So when I do walking meditation, which I've been really enjoying, my new walking path, and it's been wonderful out here in the forest, walking back and forth and using the word Bhutto, awake. And sometimes some words, either in English or Pali, from a chant, might come into the mind. Lately for me, it's been those epithets of the Buddha, Iti piso bhagava arang sama sambuddho, etc. And what's been arising is such a powerful feeling of gratitude and uplift and admiration, and the meaning of those Pali words coming through so strongly that it really lifts up the practice. So there's that aspect. Also, I've been studying the Vinaya, reading from beginning to end. I've not had the chance to do that. And of course, I've read, I think, most of it already at different times. But I'm finding something valuable and powerful about really coming from the beginning to end. And I know that's not everybody's style. I heard one time that, different people have different ways of reading books or reading the newspaper. Some people like the front to back method. That's kind of the way I am. Other people like to jump to the end and catch the ending before they read the book. We have to look at what suits our conditioning, what's not suits our defilements. We want to make sure we're frustrating those and working them through and learning how to stand up against the habits that we have that are leading to more stress and suffering, to being less content. And the word that's coming to mind is compatible, but what makes us easy to live with? What makes it easy to let go of our own opinions and views and habits? The practice isn't just about being happy and comfortable, obviously. We know that. We can't really be happy and comfortable on the long term unless we investigate and sand down those unskillful habits. So there is that balancing or agility that we need to have to make the body and mind comfortable and content and happy when that's appropriate, and to say no and be firm and be clear and work with those defilements when they arise. So I've been thinking about different approaches to practice, and what's come to my mind is kind of a simile for it, or a metaphor maybe. I have a few amateur painters in my family, and they use different techniques. So my mother painted beautiful pictures of landscapes, and her approach and the results of her painting were these beautiful, detailed, really finely done oil paintings, and it was a process that had a specific steps to them. She painted from a photograph, so she, of course, choose what she wanted to do, and then there are all the steps of making that into a painting, and there's a structure there. So I think, like, for the approaches to practice where really the emphasis is on formal meditation and a particular technique and the expectation of certain kinds of results, is this can work for some people. This can be a very supportive way to practice. But then I think, there are other approaches. Maybe at first we gain some skill in that way, like learning the scales when you're going to play piano or something. But then, the practice might evolve into using other kinds of techniques. And so my daughter and my granddaughter both paint also, and they use a variety of techniques, and one of them is called pour painting. And I don't know if you know what that is, but it's pouring the acrylic paint onto the canvas. And then there are all kinds of ways of working with it to create a painting there. You're adding different colors, maybe using a hair dryer to move the paint around, or different techniques to do that. I've seen some painters who pour it over a vase, and each time they add a color, it spreads out, and then there are ways of making, effects with that. And you never know what you're going to quite come up with, how it's going to turn out. And I feel like, okay, my practice is more like pour painting. The intuition of, like, what color do I bring in? All of these different practices, the devotional practices that I use, and the study and teaching as part of my practice, and how to work with the situations that arise and my own mind and in the environment I'm in. And, it's more like, okay, what colors, a lot of different colors, a lot of different strands of the practice. And this is, of course, a kind of a widening scope of what practice means. And someone earlier mentioned Stillness Flowing, the biography of Ajahn Chah, and he encouraged his students to think in terms of, not just practicing formal meditation, but he said, when you get up off your cushion, your practice isn't ending. You're just changing posture, so that the practice is continuous. We're constantly looking to develop the mind. We're constantly evaluating, how can I approach this situation this circumstance I'm in right now, from a better place, from a place where there's more kindness, more gentleness, the wisdom is there, the firmness is there. And how can I work with what's coming up inside and also what's coming out outside? So it's going well. I mean, we'd almost don't have to, the evaluation isn't so much about what has happened or what's happening. It's about, what am I learning? There's really, what we want to do is learn from the body, learn from the mind, see what we can understand about it. And if we're learning about it, we're a little bit distanced from it. We're not caught up in it being me or mine. That's another reflection I use often, the 3 characteristics. Knowing that none of this, even the habit patterns that I have. It's not my essence. It's not me. It's not mine. It's conditioning from the past. And to have that distance, the mindfulness to recognize that and not fall into trying to prop up the sense of self. So when we're confronted with some kind of criticism or something, what is it that we do? Do we just try to defend ourselves, try to prop up the sense of self? I'm right. I want to be right. Or do we really want to learn from it? Let go of, like whatever it is that might be causing stress. Every time we try to prop up the sense of self, there's stress. Every time we identify as the sense of self, there's stress. So being able to see it, being able to be compassionate with ourselves, kind, and really listen, learn from what other people are telling us, even learn from what they're not saying, especially when it's someone in our life who's we respect, then that's really where we're going to learn and develop. So it's the learning should lead to changes in us. But there's so much energy oftentimes that goes into holding on to the way we've been, as if there's something sacred about that, those defilements. So we don't want to do that. If we can recognize it and see, that's really, really freeing. I want to share a quote with you from the Vinaya. So I've gotten through all the really challenging. I mean, reading the rules for the bhikkhus and the bhikkhunis and all of the backstory, the backstories of the rules and all the things that monastics did that made those rules be necessary is just pretty. Oh, the suttas are very uplifting and people are getting enlightened left and right. And then you read the Vinaya and it's like, oh my God, people in robes did that, But now I'm in the part of the Vinaya that's again back to stories of the Buddha's enlightenment and all different kinds of things that really are very uplifting. And there was this something that the Buddha said really shortly after his enlightenment. Seclusion is bliss for the contented who sees the teaching that they have learned. Kindness to the world is happiness for one who's harmless to living beings. Dispassion for the world is happiness for one who overcomes sensuality. But removing the conceit, I am, this indeed is the highest bliss. This too is very hard for them to see. The stilling of all intentional activities, the giving up of all ownership, the stopping of craving, fading away, ending, extinguishment. That's from the Kudika video. I think that's probably enough of my sharing about the retreat so far. We did have more verbal interaction over this first half, and the plan is to be much more silent, as almost entirely for the second half. Having a lot of time. We have had a lot of time for seclusion, but now more even. So anyway, I would like to hear any questions or comments any of you have. anything you'd like to challenge or add to what I just said? Yes, Nancy?
Sorry, I have to get to unmute. I have, I'll put myself on video too. I found a kind of stalling feeling the past week or so. I started out with a couple of intentions. One is to make sure that I practice daily, and I do meditate daily, and my husband has been meditating along with me, which is a big change after many years. So that's been very lovely. And I started out memorizing the metta, loving kindness chant in English. And I've gotten partway through, and I'm sort of stalled with the memorization. I find it, I was going to it every day, and now I'm like, oh, I didn't yesterday. And I didn't think, I'm not doing it yesterday, which is two different actions, right? There's the remembering to do it and the doing it. And I didn't do either of those yesterday. Part of that, I think, is, and it's feeling less joy, less enthusiasm. Now, part of that, I think, is a normal rhythm for me in fall, that my energy drops. I see, I get somewhat sad. And I've realized that, nature's handling it just perfectly. It's withdrawing nutrients from the leaves and taking them down into the roots, that sort of thing. And I now see fall a little differently instead of feeling of impending doom. But I do notice that my energy drops. So I'd like to reignite on this second half of Vasa, and would ask if you have any anything to add there. Thank you.
Yeah. I think looking for the joy is really good. Like even in the memorization of the Metta Sutta, pick out a passage. It doesn't have to be the next one. It could be any group of lines or any line that you find inspiring, and just memorize that. And even if it's just somewhere in that text, maybe that's just a suggestion, like look for what lifts you up, and what is it you like about fall, like maybe there's kind of a nice feeling of turning inwards that happens, or maybe there's something about the lighting that's different. And whatever it is, look for the joy, because there's, even in the worst possible situations, there's always something that we can find that's positive, that's uplifting. But sometimes we really have to look, and we also have to go against the grain of our conditioning, and maybe even the condition of our microbiome. I don't know. It's like there's so many factors. It's like, but just kind of like see what you can do to find those bright spots and put extra tension on them, and notice the small things that you're doing to help yourself. One of the things that I think really can debilitate us in our practice is having goals that we feel we're not quite meeting, and then be critical of ourselves. And it's just a downward spiral, it feels like to me. But instead, to remember that, okay, yesterday I didn't do what I set out to do from the beginning. Those two parts of the task that you mentioned. And okay, so today I want to recommit to nurturing my body and mind with this practice. And maybe I need to redefine it a little bit. What really nurtures me? What really nurtures the practice and leads to more peace and contentment and joy and enthusiasm? And it's also okay to not be enthusiastic, because we're not all going to feel that way all the time. But if we're observing it and we're bringing compassion to it, that's something to appreciate in ourselves. Sometimes we just have to be present with this. It's kind of like, okay, there's this mood going through. I can observe it. It's okay. It's like this illness. Okay, I'm going to be here listening to what it has to tell me, doing what I can, letting go of what I can't do anything about. It's all right. And then, maybe you notice a developing resilience, or maybe you'll remember that over your lifetime, you've developed this maybe resilience, maybe creativity that you can bring to work with these different conditions that arise. And see if there's like a recasting or a re-illuminating of the practice that actually will help at this halfway point. What do you think?
Yeah, thank you. And I realize there are some things I forget there's some things that I've been doing correctly, doing well. So
Yeah, I look for that. Yeah, I think about, the people that I'm not a trainer of animals. I train my own animal inside here. But when I see people who are really good at that, they're rewarding the good things and they're not putting all that much attention on the things that kind of fall. And that feels to me like it's so much more productive and so much more inspiring. I mean, yeah, we have to acknowledge when we really blow it and we've got to learn from it, but then just learn and let it go. And, it's like, how can I keep, stay open to being taught? I like that Ajahn Chah said, everything is teaching us.
Mm.
So if there's something we didn't do the way we had set out to do, then that's teaching us. What can I learn? How can I be more understanding and compassionate of myself and others and still maintain the levels of sila, samadhi, panya that are valuable to maintain and develop?
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for the sharing and question. Yes, James.
Thank you for the talk, Ayya. It's greatly appreciated. Very sort of inspirational, really. It's Sam. Not sure what to say. I just feel like I want to say something. You know what I mean? It's sort of weird. I think what I found annoying about meditation from the beginning is when you start, you kind of want detailed step-by-step instructions on you do this and you do this, then you do this, then you do this, and you never seem to find that anywhere. And you're like, well, what's the secret? Is someone keeping a secret here? Am I got to break into some kind of inner circle and befriend a monk, and they'll actually tell me what's what you really need to be doing. The more you do it, the more you realize that you kind of have to feel your way into it. And every mind is different. Every situation is so different that any kind of instructions have to be so very, very, very vague. And also it becomes more about, you know, you start out with very explicit instructions, follow the breath, follow the breath. But I mean, I found the more I meditate, the I don't really go with the breath so much. I'm more like feeling into the body. It's like the mind never really wants to stay there and just goes to a sort of a more broader awareness. But recently it's kind of like more like just sitting, looking at the silence or looking at the stillness and seeing it getting stiller and stiller, which is a bit of a weird thing, maybe. I don't know. But it's feeling like more and more this year. I mean, this year's been in some respects terrible for me with meditation on the face of it, because you know it's sort of really, in terms of like time. I mean, I sit every day pretty much without fail, even if it's only a short time. But it's sort of been like not long periods. Yeah. I feel like I'm feeling into more and more the subtleties of it. You know, it's sort of like the how it's non-verbal, it's non-discursive, it's non-conceptual. It's you know, I know when I started out, people be saying bring us an attitude of kindness to it, and I never quite really understood, or you know, quite what that means. That you sort of feel into it, and also subtleties of like. Well, it still kind of bothers me that, you know, where's the bliss, where's the joy, where's that coming from, you know, and why am I not getting a lot of that, you know, what am I doing wrong? And I kind of feel more and more that it's more that it's there. I'm just not sort of looking in the right direction somehow. I said this to someone the other day, like you just got to sort of learn to look carefully or in the right way, and sometimes it's very, very subtle. But I appreciate that kind of attitude of just sort of allowing things to develop and to unfold and go as they would, or go how they want to, and some sort of feel into it, really. And yet like a big part of my practice, and it seems like a kind of a bit of a contradiction, is that kind of like setting myself up for that is because, you know, I use a lot of contemplations on the Buddha and sort of rousing joy and positive thoughts that way, and you know, sometimes in other respects. So it kind of seems, on the one hand, in meditation, I'm just letting things arise naturally and just trying not to push or shape. And on the other hand, when I start meditating, it's like I'm bringing up these positive things to try and, you know, shove the mind in that direction, if you know what I mean. And so it feels like, therefore, it's not necessarily dependable, you know. Like sometimes I have these excellent sessions because it just seems to have, like, those things have just slid into the track and gone the way I wanted to, and I've come into this pleasant state, and then I can kind of let go into it, you know. Yet other times I can't. Well, sometimes weeks, possibly even months. Sometimes I can't quite get those emotions rolling, you know. And so there's like two different types of meditation for me. On the one hand, there's the ones that are very calm and clear and still, but very kind of dry, and like, you know, afterwards I'm you know, I'm in a good state and everything, and I feel it's a positive experience. But it is, like I say, it's just stillness. It's like blankness. It's like a lake with no ripples on it, and so it's very pleasant. But it's doesn't feel quite like what I should be doing. And yet there's other times when I can really kind of rouse really pleasant kind of, you know, loving, giving, kind emotions, and it can become very powerful and joyful. And obviously I welcome those times because they're particularly good. But it's weird, like I say. So there's two things really, I suppose, I'm kind of asking about, is that contradiction between just letting things flow as they need to be, and yet having to do particular things in order to set up the point where that would happen. And also that split between the meditations of just kindness, calmness, which is nice, and stillness, and yet the ones which are more joyful and blissful and loving, if you see what I mean. That's my ramble.
Yeah. Thank you, James. I think your description is pretty well. I think this is what a lot of us experience. And even, I mean, even people who've been meditating for decades will say, yeah, my mind's not calm and settled every time. and it's like we're constantly dealing with a different set of conditions, and we get kind of derailed when we have like a expectation or a goal that we need to have the goal to awaken, but the rest of it is like, what if we think I want my meditation to be a certain way, it really does inhibit our going into the areas where we need to learn. And so, like everything you talked about there, like the balancing of how much you set it up, we want to pre-program the mind to go in the right direction. This is very important, and it's really powerful and works. But the pre-programming is a gentle process. If we use too coarse of a hand with it or too harsh, it doesn't work. If we have a goal that we want to feel this, or we want to experience that, or we want to experience something we experienced last time or before or 20 years ago or whatever, that just doesn't work. It's got to be more about being inquisitive and curious and creative, and the wisdom, the skill develops in those different kind of aspects of it that you were describing. And I think this is what you're saying, and this is what you're experiencing, is like you're developing the skill to know when you put in causes and conditions. You're setting up the programming for the mind. You're following a certain course of an approach, and when you're actually observing it take over on its own and show you something, because we're going to see, as we move through the practice, we see something we never saw before. This is what happened to the Buddha. He's like, knowledge and vision arose that I never saw before. Well, that's not going to come from our having a strict program of how meditation's got to go. That comes from really allowing ourselves to see where we go into kind of side roads that are dead ends, and not go there. We need to learn that as we go along. Okay, if I let my mind go there, if I let my mind follow this fantasy, that's going to be a dead end. Come back to a focus, come back, have mindfulness and as much as possible for all of it, even if what we're watching is things that we learn are fruitless. And then to just really be willing to like go into it and let the Dhamma teach us. Like we have, like when you hear teachers talking about trusting the knowing, trusting the process, it's like that's where we really let go of our own sense of will. And so this is all this nuance that we're learning. I mean, and again, I'm like lately thinking about painting. What brings up like what color you're going to add in next. It's like really intuitive. You're feeling it. You're feeling how you want this art to move. What to add to it. You don't know what the outcome's going to be, but you're putting in something good. And this is what we'll do. Put in something good, and we see what happens. As long as it's moving, it may wobble way to the right or way to the left or whatever, but then it's moving in the direction of more peace, more calm, more patience, more wisdom, more kindness. And even when, some very uncomfortable, very maybe ugly kind of mental states arise, and then we observe them and we bring some compassion to it, and we start to recognize how to shift that. And then, maybe we don't even see that there's some kind of great development in our practice of meditation, but we see a change in ourselves in our daily life, how we're handling things. This means we're going in the right direction. That's what's crucial. And this idea of learning how to trust, this is also a part of the learning. Trust our intuition. Tomorrow's another day, or today's another day. You can always like, well, what's going to happen today? Okay, let's put in the good causes and conditions that I know I can put in. There is will, free will. We've got to use it to go in the right direction. And then there's all this stuff we have no control over. And when we set the intention that we want to wake up, and we're willing to make everything in our life, put everything in our life in service to that, there's something that comes back from the Devas, the Buddha, the Arahants, the flow of the Dhamma that supports us in that. We don't define the Dhamma. It defines us. If we're willing to let go of this idea of self, willing to let go of our own requirements, all that, it's a mess. It's a mess, and it's okay, because it's out of that creative mess that the Dhamma arises in us. And then there's a point at which we know the Dhamma, we see it clearly, and become, as it says in the suttas and also in the Vinaya, we come to the point where we become independent of others. We know the Dhamma is living in us. When we become the Dhamma, when we know that our intuitive inclinations are going in the right direction. So we have to develop the willingness to stay present with the whole messy. I mean, I don't think what could be messier than pour painting. You're pouring acrylic paint onto a canvas, and then you're putting it on a turntable and spinning it. Can you imagine? This is my practice. I've never done pour painting, but it feels like this inside sometimes. It's okay. And yeah, that's what I think. I think you're on the right track, James.
Very, very, very beautiful, inspiring words. Thank you. I actually appreciate the idea of the painting, because I had a bit of an arty phase some years ago, and I did sort of Jackson Pollock style, like, paint things. I got one in the other room back there, and what I found interesting about that is there is a sense of just feeling to it. Like, it's not just splattering random stuff on there. You just get a sense that that bit there needs a bit more, or that bit there needs a bit more, and more it ends up looking more harmonious. And you really couldn't, if someone asked you, well, why are you pouring paint there, you really couldn't tell them. You just felt like, well, it just kind of goes there, and I look at it now, and there is, I tried to replicate it a few times, but the one I've got in my room, there's something about it, and it just looks like a random mess, really. But it's like, but it is, the analogy to meditation is very apt, because it is, you just feel it and you have no idea why really it's working, but you get that sense that it's working.
Yes, there's a feeling about it. And when you said you tried to replicate it, this is why we can't replicate the process or the result of what we did yesterday. We have to be fresh in the moment and see what the right ingredients are right now. And then there is a feeling about it. It's like when people are mentioning stillness flowing, I read that book, and it's like, it feels like I can feel the spiritual influence and intuition that Ajahn Jayasaro had when he wrote it, and his love and inspiration of his experience with Ajahn Chah, and all of the people he interviewed and talked to about what happened in Ajahn Chah's life. And it's like, when you really read something inspired, you feel the inspiration. When you're connecting with your Kalyanamitta, and we're coming from that place of the heart, You really feel that inspiration. There's something special about it. It's like that painting. You can't, like you look at it and you feel the cohesiveness of it. You feel the the inspiration of it. This is what happens when we follow that intuition for our practice, and we keep our attention on the right direction. Like, yes, bottom line, I want to awaken, fully awaken. Everything else is in service to that. Everything, every moment is practice. Practice is way bigger than what we do sitting on a cushion. It's got to be everything.
That's wonderful. Thank you, Ayya.
Thank you, James. Matthew?
That whole community support has been a real big, important part of my practice. So like during this time frame, Clear Mountain has been kind of doing some retreat style. And so they have 2 slots during the day that they do a silent sit on Zoom. And so they enlarge those time frames, and I try to catch it when I can. And the enlargement of those times has made that so much easier. And there's something different about the experience of sitting in community. I also took a class in, God, it might have been a full year ago, through Barry, that we did that with Robin was the teacher. And so she broke the groups into little breakout groups, and there were just enough guys for the right size. And so she threw all the men together. And so we did that. And then we decided that we would take the next round of class together so we could do this together. And we did that again. And then at the end of that, we said, well, when these are done, why don't we just keep going? We continue to meet every Sunday. We use that time to talk about our practice. We use that time to talk about just like life struggles. We send each other stuff throughout the week, and often those are Dhamma talks, book recommendations, this, that, or the other. But that support has been really, really powerful. And one of the things that we talked about before is that sense that we know if we are sitting alone, we're never sitting alone. There's a good chance one of us is sitting. And even if one of us isn't sitting, there's all these people around the world. Given the time zone thing, anytime you pick to sit, there is a huge community that is sitting with you. And that sense that that's part of what you're tapping into, and that you have to do, but it isn't a DIY project. It's a little bit more like how the Amish raise a barn, and so we've got the community, and bit by bit. So I just wanted to share that.
That's beautiful, Matthew. Thank you. Thank you very much. All right, everyone. This has been really lovely to be with you all. And I really appreciate everyone's sharing and everyone's practice. I know those of you who haven't talked, you're also practicing, and I'm really wishing for everyone a beneficial period of time here during this 3 months. And so I think I just wish you well, and thank you.